Father, it's me, Eleanor. I know you're awake in there. I can feel it. Mother won't be able to toy with you like that ever again. This plasmid is for you. If I'm right, you can use it now. Please, find me.
Eleanor Lamb is one of the most unfortunate young women that Subject Delta will encounter during the events of the game BioShock 2. The daughter of psychiatrist and thought leader Sofia Lamb, Eleanor would be raised with a great deal of expectations resting on her shoulders. Taught from a young age that she would be the people's daughter, the culmination of her mother's ideas about rejecting the self and embracing the collective. Ideations that Eleanor would outright reject, as she saw Sofia's goals in action with callous consequences.
Mother's philosophy is just as corrupt as Ryan's. By her standards, it would be better to have the entire world equally miserable than to allow us to strive in our own behalf.
The story of Eleanor Lamb as we know it begins with her birth in 1951 to an unknown father and demanding mother. Raised in the city of Rapture, Eleanor would be largely isolated from the other children of the city, as Sofia saw them as tainted by Andrew Ryan's dog-eat-dog society. Hoping to shield her daughter from those ideas, as she preached to Eleanor the imperative of the common good. Unfortunately, however, outside of her mother's frequent lectures, Sofia would neglect her daughter at every turn, seeing it almost as a sin to put so much care into a singular human when her true allegiances lie with the care for all of humanity. As such, Eleanor would spend most of her days alone, searching out for things to do in boredom, which would often lead to her tinkering with all manner of electronics, learning how to take apart these contraptions as she contemplated what the other dog-eater children were like. A curiosity that would lead her to begin escaping from her mother's confinement and exploring the city. These escapades resulting in her befriending one of these dog-eaters and realizing that perhaps her mother's condemnation of them wasn't quite so justified. Through this new friend named Amir, she would come to learn of the surface, of the marvels above the waves, and even begin daydreaming of visiting them. Yet, as she desired more and more to spend time with her friend, her mother tried harder and harder to close her out, beefing up her security as Eleanor fought tooth and nail to escape her isolation. A game of cat and mouse that would persist until one day, her mother would disappear with little warning. Sofia had caught the ire of Andrew Ryan himself, being locked away for her perceived treason to the philosophies of Rapture, and leaving her daughter in the care of a fervent member of her flock, Grace Holloway.
Dr. Lamb came to tell me that Ryan's finally gonna lock her up. It's gonna gut the believers, and I should feel the same. But Sofia remembered that I was barren, and she asked me to take care of her baby while she's gone. Baby Eleanor Lamb. Gorgeous, clever little girl. I have a child now, and it's gonna put the whole world alright.
For the next few years, Eleanor would live her life under the charge of Grace, the pair getting along quite well, but the ever-inquisitive little girl was of course curious as to the fate of her mother. She'd seemingly known that Sofia was behind bars, but the how or why remained a mystery. Digging her teeth into those secrets, leading her to begin questioning another member of her mother's flock, a man named Stanley Poole. Stanley had been the one put in charge of many of her mother's assets while she was imprisoned, his flagrant abuse of them causing Eleanor to begin suspecting that he may not be as dedicated to Sofia as he was proclaiming. With plans to report her suspicions to her mother, Eleanor would confront Stanley one day while Grace was busy holding a meeting with the other members of the family, threatening to expose what she knew about his misdeeds as the weaselly little man began to panic. In fear of being found out, he would kidnap Eleanor and sell her off to Fontaine's little sister's orphanage, a turn of events that would rapidly shift the trajectory of her life.
A doctor keeps coming to see me. He says Rapture needs me, and tomorrow I'll be leaving with him. I ask why, and he just smiles. I'm not an orphan. Mum's alive somewhere, and Aunt Gracie is still probably looking for me. But I can't wait for them. I'm going to escape and find Amir, and we'll steal a submarine. Before it's tomorrow, I'll know what sunshine feels like.
With Fontaine's orphanages being a front for easy access to parentless children, Eleanor would be mistaken for just another of Rapture's forgotten youth. As such, she would be taken almost immediately from the orphanage and enrolled in the Protector program to become a little sister. However, as luck would have it, at the time the head of the program, Gilbert Alexander, had been attempting to redefine the relationship between Big Daddies and Little Sisters, his desire being to create an inseparable bond between the two parties that would be detrimental to the daddy if broken. One of his first successful subjects for these experiments being a man dubbed Johnny Topside and Eleanor Lamb herself. Stripped of all her personality and brought to a sense of delusion by the mind-altering therapy, she and her newfound father, Subject Delta, would roam the streets of Rapture searching for corpses to drain of their excess atom, a mission that they would excel at, even as the city began to fall into chaos. Civil war had come to Rapture, and as Ryan began to lose his grip on the city, Sofia would find a way to shake off her shackles. With her silver tongue, she would take over the prison in Persephone, recruiting ever more of the downtrodden masses into her family. Using these connections, she would discover the fate of her daughter, setting up a trap for the false father, and reclaiming Eleanor from the jaws of this metal monstrosity. However, while she'd managed to retrieve Eleanor, her condition was proving to be much harder to navigate.
This is Eleanor Lamb speaking. It's been many years since my last diary. Mother found a way to rehabilitate me psychologically, but she can't remove this thing inside my body. I look in the mirror, and I see a freak.
After countless hours of psychological therapy, Sofia would manage to break her daughter of the atom obsession that had been drilled into her mind. A repentant Gilbert Alexander even lending his aid in the matter, as he too had found his way into the family. Yet, despite her new mental clarity, the slug embedded in her stomach was proving impossible to remove, the effects of it on her body becoming more and more apparent as she aged into a young woman. For Eleanor, this thing inside her was disgusting, unnatural, but her mother had grown to see it as something of a blessing. Sofia had become enamored with the idea of creating a utopian, a person who could escape the confines of self-interest and become a solely community-focused being, compelled by the greater good with no ego or personal awareness to hold them back. She would attempt to create such a being with Dr. Alexander as a volunteer, her experiment driving the once brilliant man completely insane as she left him to rot in the depths of Fontaine Futuristics. Despite this failure, though, she had convinced herself that Eleanor's embedded slug would be the key to staving off the mental damage that had been done to Gilbert. Sofia attempting to force her daughter into accepting the role that she'd always envisioned for her, proclaiming Eleanor the people's daughter, as she told her that this was her true purpose. A purpose that Eleanor would reject wholeheartedly.
Mother says that my condition is a blessing in disguise. She constantly reminds me that I was born for the express purpose of promoting her ideals. And now, she's trying to convince me to begin splicing with the same cocktail that drove Dr. Alexander mad. She thinks that my condition makes me immune to the damage. The surface is my only chance at freedom. But Mother took the one person I knew from above and murdered him in front of my eyes. Father, if I could only find a way to bring him back.
While Dr. Lamb was busy making plans for her daughter's transformation, Eleanor would begin devising a way to leave the city. Just as when she was a child, Sofia had locked her away from the prying eyes of Rapture, and in her isolation, she would find that she was able to communicate with and even control the little sisters still roaming the decaying corridors. With this ability, she would begin looking for the body of her father, with the goal of taking a gene sample from his corpse and using a vitachamber to bring him back to life. Using the sisters, she would get into contact with a woman named Bridget Tenenbaum who would assist her in this endeavor, Eleanor working to find and revive Delta, while Bridget provided the resources to free him of the Big Daddy mental conditioning. the pair managing to bring back the metal Goliath some 10 years after he'd suffered his cruel fate at the hands of Dr. Lamb. A resurrection that would spell the end of this manipulative psychiatrist, but freedom for the people's daughter. Eleanor Lamb is one of the most unfortunate young women who can be found wandering the corridors of this dying city. Born into a household of no love, Eleanor would never be given a chance to know herself, her mother forcing her to accept the idea that she was bred for service, that she was to be the ultimate servant to the masses. A concept that her life would reinforce as she would become a slave to the wants of Rapture, her mind being warped even more in the process. However, while the city and her mother saw her as nothing more than their puppet, she would find connection in the most unlikely place imaginable. A father forced on her by Rapture, an equally broken man who was the only one she could truly trust.
The Rapture dream is over, but in waking, I am reborn. This world is not ready for me, yet here I am. It would be so easy to misjudge them. You are my conscience, Father, and I need you to guide me.